Sixties shed-bashing memories. Speke Depot and the 9 Fs. Speke Depot was a drafty, open sort of place, in a triangle of lines and sidings, festooned with overhead wires. Not easy to bunk without running into the heavy hand of the assistant shedmaster.
Yeah, what are you doing?
But the depot was known, along with Birkenhead, for being the go-to place for 9 Fs. My mates and I, we loved 9 Fs, spaceships as we called them, or Niners. They were so impressive and powerful. They used to pull the big oil trains from Stanlow to Leeds, and we often saw them going up to Diggle. At night I could hear them from where I lived, their woofing and clanking echoing off the hills. They slipped occasionally, but always got on top of the job. Yeah, they were wonderful machines. Dave, my really good pal, and Pete, who was a bit of a tearaway, spent our Sundays bunking local sheds like Stockport, Patricroft or Newton Heath. Great places, I know, but 9 Fs were rare at these depots. We'd hang about the station at Staley Bridge and see a few unusual cops at the weekend, but when a 9 came through, it shook the place to its foundations. The firemen on the 9s always seemed to be young and would give us a wave or a V sign, making us laugh. I noticed these guys usually had a handkerchief knotted at the corners on their head. Later I learned that this was a habit of men at the Merseyside sheds, so that was our first clue. This shot is typical of the 9s as we knew them, a Speke allocated loco too. So we started to make plans to go to either Speke or Birkenhead. We were about 14 at the time, and Speke was out of the range of our bikes or our pocket money. But luckily Dave's dad offered to run us there one Sunday, so off we went to Speke in Dave's dad's little Vanguard car. I don't remember how we got to the shed, but we got in all right. I should mention that Dave's dad was a police inspector and would show his identification to get us in.
Hello.
Being a Sunday, there were lots of locos slumbering in light steam under a pall of acrid smoke. Here's a WD-280 standing by the ash plant. There was also a mechanical coaling plant, as well as an old brick one, dating from the LNWR days, and there were 12 roads in the shed. Outside there were some sidings as well as a triangle for turning locos. It wasn't long before we found some 9 Fs, and Dave started taking down numbers. He could be quite serious when he was like this, so I left him and just wandered about enjoying the sight of these massive beasts. I don't know why, I never took numbers, preferring to drink the scene in and make memories that still glow in my firebox to this day. Pete, however, had found the scrap line and was removing a loco plate. He'd taken a chisel and was prizing the thing off. Funny really, since we were there with Gideon of the Yard, as I used to call Dave's dad.
Is that a 9F?
I thought this was bad form, robbing the locos, but Pete told me to go away. Not quite in those terms. If he's still around, he must have quite a collection of plates. They seemed to be magnetically attracted to him, despite their lack of iron content. A few weeks later, we'd been on a school railway club trip to Lostock Hall Shed, and Pete had gone rogue, busy with his chisel, removing loco plates, but he met his nemesis at Lostock Hall. Don't ask me how or why, but he somehow got stuck in the funnel of an 8F on the scrap line, and had to remove all his trophies in order to get out. Perhaps he was trying to get the funnel off, although I'd have liked to have seen him get that on the bus home. Well, he got into big trouble with the master who'd taken us, and his trophies were handed in at the shed. A couple of years later, Pete was responsible for almost burning the school gym down. Luckily, nobody was hurt. We didn't see him again. I think he was expelled for that. Anyway, back at Speke. I was surprised that the loco men here were mostly cheerful and humorous types. Well, this was Merseyside. One driver saw me watching as he got a 9F ready for a Sunday ballast working, and he said, "Hey, These aren't bad camels, you know. I don't know why loco men called steamers that, but I encountered the name a lot, and even my uncle, a driver from Crewe North, used the term. This kindly driver took a couple of minutes to talk to me. He said that the nines here were mostly used on the Long Megs, the very heavy anhydrite trains from Long Meg mine in Cumbria to ICI in Widnes. It was used in the making of sulphuric acid. They would come down the Sutherland Carlisle with the long downgrades requiring skill to keep the trains under control. He said, "The fitters love 'em to bits. They need a new set of brake blocks after every long meg." What a job. I guess he was being sarcastic. There were also duties for 9Fs from Ford's plant at Hale Wood, just down the road from the shed, taking car bodies up to Bathgate near Glasgow, and super heavy oil trains to Preston that sometimes needed 2 9Fs. Now that would be a stirring sight. My new friend mentioned that the nines would pull anything. All you had to do was open the regulator wide and find a gear setting that she liked. But they did have quite a hunger for coal. You needed a very fit young fireman. This loco man also told me that the Super Ds, that I'd rather liked, were known at Speke as Stupid Ds, because they were so awkward to drive, and the cab was rubbish. That was a blow, but I just laughed, trying to look in the know. I learned that Robin Riddles, the designer of the 9Fs, paid attention to the cab ergonomics and had a mock-up made to see what crews thought. Better than a Super D, I reckoned. So, what made the 9Fs so special? I guess because they were the last throw of the dice for steam in Britain. And what a throw! They were the culmination of so many years of freight loco thinking. The head of a line that started, perhaps, with Holden's Decapod built in 1902. Bowen Cook's LNWR G1s of 1912 were also a successful freight design. And we mustn't forget Robinson's equally capable Great Central 8K 280s. These two classes were long-lasting locomotives, certainly the progenitors of the 9F. In 1935, Stanier had produced his very successful 8F freight loco, lasting to the end of steam in the northwest. But things started to really hot up when Robin Riddles designed the 280 Austerities in 1943, followed by a larger 210 built to a no-frills specification and using available materials. When BR turned to Robin Riddles to design a new standard heavy freight unit, he built upon his earlier austerity design, utilising a larger boiler and many innovations. What came out of the two works that built the class, Swindon and Crewe, was to be the most powerful freight locomotive to run on British railways, as well as one of the shortest lived. They were built in 1954, although the last was built in 1960, and they'd all gone by early 68. As well as the 8Fs and Black 5s at Speke, we saw a couple of Franco-Crostis, an experiment that didn't give the economies that had been hoped for. 10 locos were converted with a preheater boiler underneath a smaller than normal 9F boiler. The normal chimney was only used at lighting up, or on occasions when extra draft was needed. Normally the loco exhausted from a chimney near the fireman's windows. They weren't popular, for obvious reasons, and the exhaust gases tended to allow acids to condense in the preheater, which quickly corroded the tubes. The ones we saw at Speke were locos converted back to conventional steaming, and unofficially downgraded to 8F. Here's a magnificent shot from Wilfred D. Cooper of an unrebuilt Franco-Crosti at Trafford Park Depot. It's a strange-looking beast, but not without a kind of brutal charm. The Franco-Crostis were all scrapped between 1966 and 67. While we were at the shed, we saw this 9F missing its pony truck. Not sure what the story was there. There's no mention of it in Dave's notebook for the day. Sorry about the quality of this Brock's Brownie shot. In contrast, here are some more superb photos from Wilfred D. Cooper. from a collection curated by his grandson Dave. There's a link in the credits to Dave Cooper's site. These shots were all taken in Patricroft, somewhere my mate Dave and I knew well. This one in particular is full of interest. The good shed and old stables, the interesting old truck, and of course the loco, waiting for a signal to proceed forward to Manchester, with a fascinating variety of vans behind the drawbar. And now a photo from Dave's salary, of a Speke 9F at home, resting beside the old LNWR coal stage and water facility. Unlike me, Dave Salary had the presence of mind to take his camera with him, and his photo site is well worth a browse. There's a link in the description. Funny how it seemed almost everyone back in the 60s was called Dave. A beautiful shot from John Cosford shows a 9F powering upgrade with a freight, possibly on a shap. This was the typical state most 9Fs were in. I never saw a clean one. We met a couple of local lads at Speke who were very friendly, telling us that they came from the flats across from the sheds. They came every day, they boasted, but one had been found by the assistant shedmaster, and proudly showed us his red and sore-looking ear. Speke was always an important shed, but by 1967, many locos had congregated there to be sent for scrap. By December that year, there were only 3 serviceable 9Fs. The rest, some 50 examples, were on the scrap roads. Speke was near Garston Docks. In the 40s, due to the traffic from the docks, over 100 locos would congregate at weekends, particularly when banana boats were in dock, according to Ken Pierce in his super book, Shedside on Merseyside. My last memory of the place, from a cloudless day 58 years ago, is of a 9F wheezing and groaning onto the Demick sidings, the brakes squealing on, and then a huge cloud of steam from the boiler blowdown valve. The crew jumped off without a word or a backward look. But I want to remember 9Fs in their prime, dirty and stained with limescale, but still undisputed masters of the job, as this great shot from Vernon Sidlow shows. Thanks so much for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks also to the photographers who've helped with the video. Your work is much appreciated. There are links to all in the credits. And yet, I'll be back soon with another video for you.